Okay, let's cover a topic that comes up honestly pretty often, not just with me, but amongst people themselves, and that is the iPhone versus Android war. It's really kind of funny because people like to talk about which one's better, and honestly, they're both great phones. I mean, both have highlights, both have pros, both have cons. A lot of it really depends on you as the individual end user, what you're familiar with, and what it is that you're looking out of a smartphone. A lot of people like to have their ego tied to their cell phone, which doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I remember sitting there. I worked with this guy at the help desk one time, and he loved Android phones. So he was one of those like diehard, no, iPhone sucks, Android's way better, Android's way better. And I really don't know why he had his ego tied to his phone, Justin Stuckey. I'm just kidding, brother. All right, so if anything that I say comes out and you are offended, I would ask, why do you have your ego tied to your cell phone? I mean, it just seems a little odd. I have had both, and currently I am on an iPhone, but I'll be covering pros and cons of both and why I'm on an iPhone right now in particular. So let's cover iPhone first. I am on an iPhone because I'm very deep in what's known as the Apple ecosystem. The Apple ecosystem, if you don't know, Apple devices work very well together. I'll give you a simple example. I've been able to copy and paste from my iPhone to my Mac when I'm working. If I'm browsing something on my Mac, I can then pick right up on my phone. I mean, the devices just work really seamless together, and it doesn't matter if it's the Apple TV. It's really easy to stream from an iPhone to your Apple TV. It takes like 2 seconds, and really it's flawless. I mean, I don't want to say fully flawless because there's always a little glitch in both Androids and iPhones. I know I've seen it on both, so it happens on both. But that's a really big reason that I'm on an iPhone right now, is because I'm really deep in the Apple ecosystem. My laptop, which also acts sometimes as my desktop, is a MacBook Pro, but I do have a desktop which is running Windows 11, and that's my home built PC. So I'm really kind of all over the place on which products that I use on a regular basis. iPhones tend to be a little bit more reliable, but I can't even say that because now we're talking about reliability as far as the hardware is concerned. So let's talk about the hardware, number one. With Android, you're going to have a much broader range of hardware to choose from. However, with an iPhone, you have something called the firmware that goes on top of the hardware, and then the operating system interacts with the firmware to control the actual hardware lying underneath. Apple is one of the only companies out there that makes their devices and designs them end to end. So they design that hardware to interact specifically with their firmware and nothing else, which is going to interact with their software. Really makes for a very smooth operating device, and in my mind, or just from what I've seen, you get a little bit of performance boost on there. With Android, it's open source, which a lot of people love, especially I would say tech enthusiasts or power users, because you have way more control. You can get root access to the phone, you can have granular permissions on the phone, and you can customize the hell out of Androids. I think that's probably one of the best things about it. Not that you can't do them on iPhones, but Android is what's called an open source operating system, meaning anybody can grab it, anybody can take a look at the code, they can use it, they can change it, they can alter it. So developers typically like Androids a lot more as well. Price and value. iPhones tend to be a little bit more pricey. They have been coming out with the iPhone SEs lately, which kind of break some of that price barrier, and it's been, I think, a really good thing just to get the iPhone into the hands of more users so that they can get more feedback from the general public, when before iPhones were a little bit more kind of like priced themselves out of certain people that just can't afford, those really fancy phones. So they came out with the SE to kind of combat that. But Androids tend to be a little bit more budget friendly because you have a very broad range of choice in the hardware, and that's where a lot of your money goes to. That's the price difference from phone to phones, is the quality of the hardware, how much storage you have, and overall, the performance levels of different hardwares. Update and support. With Apple, you get unmatched update and support. What do I mean by updates and support? If I have a problem with my iPhone, or even if I don't know how to operate it, I can always look for an Apple store, go to the Genius Bar, they can walk me through it. A lot of people don't know this, but if you have an Apple store near you, they usually offer free courses that you can go to, and they'll be covering different topics amongst a range of their products. Privacy and security, Apple tends to be a little bit more on the privacy side. It's been known for quite some time to be a little more security conscious, but that's because you can really customize your Android phone. So Android, they secure it and they offer a level of security up to a certain point, but because they're allowing you to make such deep changes to the operating system, it's kind of like, well, it's a very secure phone, but if I go in and I disable the firewall on the phone, well, I've kind of killed a lot of the security that was designed to keep it secure from the end user. Now, if you're not messing with those settings or altering them, chances are you're fine. The camera quality. iPhone for a long time has been known to release cutting edge cameras, but realistically, companies like Samsung and Google does own the Android operating system. Even though it's open source, they're the ones who maintain it, support it, and really kind of keep an ownership on it, but it's still an open source software. Anybody can use it, anybody can dabble in it, anything like that. You can make your own apps for it, where Apple has a lot more strict process on what can and cannot go onto the App Store. But that takes us into apps availability. Since iPhone does have a stricter process, it can be a little bit more difficult from your average person to get your own custom app onto an Apple phone because of the process that it needs to go through to show that it's not releasing security vulnerabilities, it's not going to degrade the performance of the phone or anything like that. So they're very strict on the quality of their phone. And that brings me to another one, which is, this is always the argument that I get from Android users. And again, I'm not even arguing for iPhones. It's just what I personally choose to go with. The reason I personally choose to go with an iPhone is because of the level I'm at within the Apple ecosystem, but also I'm working on clouds a lot. I'm doing a lot of development work. So when I'm on my phone, I just want it to work. I don't like to tinker with my phone at all. Honestly, it drives me nuts when I have to tinker with it. That was the biggest thing that took me from an Android to going back to an iPhone, because once I got back to an iPhone, everything was just a lot more stable, and that's how I like it. When I want to listen to music, I just want the music to work, right? I don't want to have to download the iCloud store or whatever it is that they have on the Android so that I can listen to my music. And honestly, the quality of it wasn't very good when I was using all of what I had originally developed when the first iPods came out. That was my first Apple purchase, was actually one of the original iPod Nanos when I joined the US Navy, and I realized I needed to start running. Went and got myself an iPod, and that's when I started developing my music library. So that naturally kind of took me to iPhone, but I did for a while take a break, go over to what some would call the dark side, and used an Android to the fullest. Loved it. I think it's a great phone. Personally, it's just not for me because I don't like to tinker with my phone. I just want it to work. But getting back to the apps availability and features coming out, the argument that I always get from Android people is, oh, that was available on Android a long time ago. Like, Apple just came out with it. That doesn't mean that Apple wasn't already working on those features. Apple has a very strict quality control process. Like, it is nuts how strict their quality control process is, and that's what keeps people like me a customer, because most of the stuff before it's actually released and put into the hands of the regular customers, they just, before it even gets to you, they've already tested it so thoroughly that I rarely have any problems with it once it comes out. And I know there's going to be an Android person sitting there going, oh, I've never had a problem. Okay, congratulations. Don't know what else to tell you on that. Battery life and charging. They vary both and I'm not even going to deny the old, oh, doesn't Apple batteries get worse off as the phone gets older? Well, that's true with every battery. What you're referring to is a long time ago, Apple was accused of intentionally draining their battery life. In other words, degrading the battery as they would come out with new releases. Honestly, I don't know if that ever came to be true or not, because as they develop these new technologies and they're still putting them on 5-year-old phones, that's naturally going to happen anyway. That happens with Android. It happens with every phone. So it's not anything that's unique to iPhone. It's just, I know that accusation came out a while ago. I don't remember the outcome of that. I mean, even if it is true, I don't believe it's a problem anymore. I wouldn't know because I am on an iPhone upgrade program, so I tend to get the new iPhone basically the day that it's released. I get a new iPhone every year, and yes, I do have to pay for it. But I like having my phone being on the latest and greatest, and I like having all the latest features. Gaming. I'm not much of a gamer on my phone, but from what I'm told, iPhone kind of with their Apple Arcade has really kind of come a long way and attracted more gamers, as well as some of the things such as the visual context with the screen and the controls. From what I hear, Apple's just a little bit better on that front as well. Android offers a lot more emulation options though, so for those of you that like the nostalgic regular Nintendo games, you can get those for Androids because you can put emulators on there that has to do with the open source capabilities of the phone itself. File management and storage. Android is a lot more flexible, and you're going to find that it's more flexible across almost everything that I'm going to name here. That could be if you're using the mobile device, like let's say we're not looking at it necessarily from a phone standpoint, but when I worked at a large supermarket chain, one of the projects I was on was doing a wireless upgrade, and in tandem with that wireless upgrade, they were upgrading their scanners that they use to do inventory on all their devices across all of their stores. And they were going with an Android solution because you can put Android on a bunch of different scanners. With Apple, you do not have that capability to take the Apple iOS and put it on a scanner. You can't do that with Apple devices. But Apple does have additional hardware that you can purchase so that you can do what's called a mobile device management solution, and you're managing multiple iPhones at one point. So realistically, it kind of depends on who you are as an individual and what you're looking for out of a smartphone. And I wrote down a couple of just, I wouldn't, none of this is set in stone. It all kind of changes because, for one, it says, power users. Power users typically like to go towards Android. I would like to think about myself as a power user, just not with my cell phone, because my cell phone is, at this point, cell phones have become an extension of us as individuals. And so I just want that to work when I need it to work. So if you're looking for a familiar ecosystem, well, if you're not on Apple yet and you switch over to Apple, obviously that's not going to be very familiar to you. But once you do get over that learning curve, I would say it doesn't matter if you're on an iPhone, an iPad, or even a Mac. The experience is typically pretty equal throughout all of those devices once you get used to it. The settings as far as my phone to my iPad to my Mac, they look almost identical, with the obvious changes of, hey, one's a computer, one's a tablet, one's a phone. But from the tablet to the phone, for example, there's very little that changes from the user experience other than you're just dealing with a much bigger phone. And I think the main difference is the smart pen that comes with tablets nowadays. Third-party devices, Android wins because you can't take the iOS and throw it on third-party devices. That's one of the benefits that Android gets with being open source. Some of your privacy-focused users are going to tend to gravitate more towards iPhone just because with Android, you are putting a little bit of that security back into the hands of the end user. So if anything happens to you or happens to your phone, you have a security breach of anything like that, chances are it was a setting that you changed, not something that shipped out of the box and you pulled it out and just started using it. Chances are it was something that you changed, and that's what caused that vulnerability. Developers tend to like to go towards Android just because they can get their apps out a lot quicker. So if you are a developer or you're looking to be a developer, Android would probably be the best route to go for you. Tech enthusiasts, people who really like these new features and everything that come out. That's a point to be made about the iPhone is no, you're not going to have the latest features. Android is clearly going to have the latest features come out much sooner because they don't have that strict quality control process. Now, it's not that they don't have a quality control process, it's just that it's different when we're talking about open source software compared to something that Apple says, no, this is ours, we back it, it's got our seal of approval. That's why you can go into almost any Apple store and they will help you out the best that they can. Customization enthusiast, I've met a lot of people that, whenever there's a new release of the Android OS, they're freaking out about it. I remember going to, when I was actually releasing those little handheld devices for that supermarket chain, I went and met one store manager and he was just in love with these scanners because he was a huge Android enthusiast. And I think that's awesome. Like, if you're going to be an enthusiast about something, may as well be something that you have to use on a regular basis. So he was very much a power user as far as Androids are concerned. It's crazy because I was like, well, if you're a store manager, if you don't like that, you definitely have another job at the IT department, in the mobile device department, if you will. Family of mixed devices, Android, it typically works better because you have a mix of devices. Therefore, non-Apple products, you're just talking about going with an entire family, all Apple devices. That's going to be very expensive, but it's also very difficult to kind of control in a multiple device scenario. Budget conscious users, Android's going to be cheaper. Just a fact. If you look up some of the different options that you have and price points from Android, your best option with Apple devices is going with the iPhone SE. So if it's truly an iPhone that you're after, the SEs are awesome. Not saying that they aren't, but you would get a fully featured Android phone probably for the price of an SE, and the SEs are going to be a little bit more limited on some of the features that it comes with compared to its Android counterpart. Content creators and videographers. One of the things that Apple is very well known for is about creativity. They've always been a computer company, but one of the things that really set them off when Steve Jobs returned to Apple in the 1990s was he was a huge music person. That's why he invented the iPod, and he was the first person to put a music store on the internet that was iTunes. So they've really kind of kept to that creativity aspect in their branding, their products, and their company culture this whole time. So when you are in the Apple ecosystem, you're going to find that you really don't need a whole lot of extra products or even software to start developing content or creating content. Most of it is there by default. You just may have to purchase like a Final Cut Pro license, and that's a one-time purchase. You don't have to pay a reoccurring subscription fee. You purchase it one time. When I upgraded my MacBook the last time, it took all those purchases that I had and moved them over to my new MacBook. I've also felt that whenever I've had an issue with my phone and I do have to replace it, that when I go get a new iPhone and it restores, I feel I really can't tell the difference from the old phone that I was on that had an issue compared to the new one. When I say issue, I'm talking, maybe the screen broke, or I did have one where the battery started to basically bulge a little bit, but that was a really old phone, and that was me not practicing good battery etiquette. You should not be leaving your phone plugged in to sit there and overcharge. It's just not good for the battery, but they've put a lot of features in lately that kind of combat the damage that it does to the battery. For reliability and familiarity, I would definitely say iPhone, but again, if you'll notice, there's a lot of different factors that come into play on what it is that you should use. So for your grandma and grandpa, if they don't have cell phones yet, I would probably be pushing them more towards the Apple ecosystem, because once they learn iPhone, then they can actually expand out to other Apple products. Whereas if you go Android, that just kind of gets into that. You're going to have to tinker with it a little bit. There's a lot of customizations that can happen in there. And if you do a customization that was wrong, now you need to know how to reverse that. Apple just kind of takes all of that away and says, nah, you really can't do that with our phones. Not to say there's not customization. The widgets helped out, I would say, quite a bit in the ability to control the sizes of the widgets. But again, an Android person would say that's been on there forever. So I don't really think that there's one that's better than the other. It's about you as an individual end user. If you do end up saying, you know what, I'm on Android and I'm going to give iPhone a shot, or if I'm on an iPhone and I'm going to give Android a shot, first off, you should have a great experience no matter what. But just keep in mind some of the bullet points that I actually touched on as far as what one is more the pros and cons of one compared to the other, because you are going to have a learning curve no matter what. You're going from one operating system to a completely different operating system. That is going to be your learning curve. If you have an iPhone and you would like to know more about the features, I can't name this for Android, I apologize. This is just because I've been on an iPhone for so long. But if you would like to learn more of the advanced features of your phone, the Tips app that comes shipped with the iPhone natively, that's a great place to just kind of go through and learn some of the cool features that you have on your phone that you probably just aren't utilizing quite now. So thank you everybody for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll be producing more videos here to come. Have a good Thanksgiving.